What's up guys, it is MurderInc here, back with another Raid Shadow Legends video. As everyone knows, we have this massive champion rework coming up, and if you missed it, I'm gonna fill you in. There was an announcement in the official Raid Discord about a bunch of new things, but more importantly, and what we're gonna talk about today is, a little while ago, Plarium did reach out to the moderators, which includes myself, of that Discord, and they said, hey guys, what are some epic champions, what are some legendary champions that you think we should consider for a massive rework that is going to come up within the next month or so? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to remember to the best of my ability which champions we gave to them, so you have a small idea at what you could possibly see coming up from this rework, if they in fact use our list, which I'm pretty sure they're going to, because they've done something like this before where they've asked us for feedback and they've actually directly applied that to the game, which is an awesome move forward. What I want you guys to do while I'm going through this list of champions as I try to remember, give me your feedback and what you want to see. I'm not going to go over what I want to see in the skill changes, I'm just going to go over the champions. I want you to give me what you would do if you were Plarium in changing the champions that I'm going over as far as their skill goes. And let's see how many of you in the comments can actually guess what's actually going to happen when this rebalance goes live. So pretty much what we're going to do is I'm going to start with the factions and just quickly go through and try to remember as best as I can. So off the bat here, I don't recall any of these champions. None of these champions really stand out to me. So it's pretty safe to say that I don't believe any of the Bannerlord legendaries are in fact in this. Possibly Lord Chamfort. He did get a rework to HP, which actually made him a little bit worse. I don't think a lot of people realize how hard he actually hit when he was based on attack, even though it didn't have synergy with him being an HP legendary. So now that we went over Bannerlords, let's move straight on to High Elves. Basilius Rowanus. I remember that being submit as well as Bellinor. So these are the two legendaries that I do recall being submit. And as far as epics go, I don't recall seeing any of these epics. Also, this was a decent amount of time ago, so I can't say for sure on the epics since I'm mainly focused on the legendaries. However, I did review the whole list, give a ton of feedback at the time, and I went through every single champion to make sure the best possible choices were submit, because we were limited on how many we could submit. So as of right now, we do have the two Basilius Rowanus as well as Bellinor, which would be really cool. So let me know what you think should be done to these two champions, especially Bellinor, since he is a void. I know myself and other clanmates have used him in a 1 Ultra Nightmare, but we are such a small crowd in the entirety of this game that that is not a reason for them not to look at these champions. Alright, moving on to the Sacred Order. I believe Errol was on the list as well, even though he's kind of a niche one-shot champion. And as far as epics go, I believe Canonis as well as Lady Atessa, that's her name, right? We're both on that epic list, and that should cover our Sacred Order champions. Let me know what you think the changes to those champions should be. Actually, before I move on, I believe Missionary was also there. His name is ringing a bell. And as someone who I haven't played around with all of the epics, and I'm not as comfortable with all of them, even though I do have them, let me know what you guys think. I did do this on stream, and someone also talked about Mistress of Hymns, so she could be another champion that could be looked at for potential rework and buff. Moving on to Barbarians, I don't believe any legendaries were submit from Barbarians. This was before the Contra fusion, possibly Elder Scarg, but he does have his niche uses. Jotun, 100%, I made sure he was on that list for you guys. Aina, as well as Suai Ghostborn was also on that list, and possibly Maeve. Moving on to the Ogren tribes. Griptuck Mossbeard was submit. I know a lot of people were unhappy with him. And as far as epics go, I don't believe any of the epics were submit. Possibly Galcut, since he has a very strange kit, but I don't believe any of the Tower brothers were actually submit to that list. However, just because they weren't submit does not mean that Plarium isn't going to make a change to them. They just asked for our feedback and what we think as the players, but they can definitely make up their own mind and make changes according to themselves. Gurgle the Augur might be on the list. His kit is pretty good, his downside is his base stats, and I don't believe he was submit. Moving on to Lizardmen, I believe Skull-Lord Vargal was also put on the buff list. As far as epics, of course, Drake was instantly put on that list. The other epics, to my knowledge, were not. Going over Skinwalkers now. The only Skinwalker I believe as far as legendary goes was Warchief. Warchief has already been changed, and I don't think the change was for the better. And Snorting Thug, as well as And out of the epics, I believe only Snorting Thug was on the list as far as a change goes. Moving on to orcs, we have a couple orcs here. We have Grohawk the Bloody, as well as Tila Gormain on that list for any type of buff that they could possibly give to them, because they could definitely use it. Grohawk does have his use in Faction Wars. However, outside of that, he isn't really getting a lot of play, so hopefully they can do some change to at least increase his value to another aspect of the game instead of just Faction Wars and the very situational scenario in the arena. As far as epic goes, the only epic I do remember from orcs is Bonekeeper, but Torture Helm and Bloodfeather could possibly be on that list as well. Now moving on to the Demon Spawn champions. The champions that I remember were Tangerphone, and I think Mortu Macabre was discussed. I don't remember if he was actually put on the list there. I have seen him used to success before, so I'm not really sure what ended up happening with it, but I know Tangerphone for sure was submit to that list. Another really cool thing that I'd like to see is Tyrant Ixthamor's AI being fixed. As a lot of you know who have him, he isn't using his HP burn, so I would really hope that he is getting changed. There is going to be a small change to Drexler Blood Twin. It's not going to be huge, so don't expect anything game changing for Drexler, but there is going to be a small altercation there in what his kit does. So those are the 2, possibly 3 legendaries we could be looking at for rework there. As far as epics go, I believe Hellgazer was on the list and possibly Excruciator. Moving on to the Undead faction, Crypt King Grawl was mentioned on that list. No other legendaries actually ring a bell. I think someone did mention Suzerain. And as far as epics go, the only 2 epics that kind of ring a bell in my head are Defiled Sinner here and Corpse Collector. Moving on to the Dark Elves, Astrolith was brought up. Queen Eva is kind of known to be a campaign farmer. It would be cool if they did change her kit, so I'm hoping she's there. I don't believe she was on the list. Blind Seer, I think she's pretty good, but I think there are a lot of champions who do what she does better. And since she is a void, I think she could definitely use some love. The Login Reward legendary was also not available at the time, so she was not submit. As far as epics go, I believe Fang Cleric and possibly Delver were on the list. I know Fang Cleric for sure was submit to them. Moving on to the Night Revenant, Bistophis was on the list. Soulless, his main problem is his base stats, so we weren't really sure what to do with that. Whirlim, the mention of his cooldowns being a bit too long was also brought up as well. And a bunch of people were pushing for Tomb Lord. I didn't personally agree with it, but in case Tomb Lord is changed, it's definitely worth mentioning. I'm not sure if he made it to the final list, but I do know there was a significant discussion about Tomb Lord there. As far as epics go, I believe Kytus, as well as Pitiless One and Necro Hunter were on that list. I don't know a lot about Crypt Witch. I did look at her kit, and I kind of left that alone in the discussion since I don't know a lot about the champion. Alright, moving on to our final faction for this evening. We do have the Dwarves. None of the Dwarf legendaries were actually mentioned here. And I believe Bartle and Rockbreaker were the 2 epics that were discussed here. Obviously, in my opinion, Dwarves are probably one of the most well-rounded factions, even though they don't have that many champions, which possibly we'll be seeing more soon since they are lacking so many epics and legendaries from their faction list. But I think overall, Plarium actually did a pretty good job since this is the newest faction to come out, which definitely gives me high hopes that the next faction is going to be even better. It is arguable to say that this is kind of an overpowered faction. We do have Tormund, we have Molly, Mountain King, and Trunda, and kind of no matter how you look at it, these are very top tier legendaries and can help you through a ton of content. So maybe they could dial it down a little bit when they're looking at the next faction, although I'm not going to complain because, as you guys know, I do like collecting all of them. And if they do release the next faction, which should be the Assassin's Guild, it would be awesome to see really good champions and really good epics across the board. I think they should do that. I really don't think they should have such a wide gap between how good a champion is and how bad a champion is, but I also think that they should look into nerfs. They didn't mention too much about nerfs. They didn't ask about nerfs when they asked us for feedback. I would be surprised if they came out with any substantial nerfs to any champions, but I do think there should be a closer balance between all of the legendaries as well as all of the epics, and I don't think any epic should be competing with the legendary in any type of content. I think that is the main value in the good feeling of getting legendary. The legendary should be at least slightly better and at everything than an epic should be, but you should also be able to use gear to build up epics to a solid standard to be able to compete with someone who isn't properly building a legendary. Alright guys, so that was my breakdown on who I remember being on the list that was sent to Plarium when they asked for which champions should we be looking at to buff. Let me know what you guys think. I'm definitely going to be reading the comments on this one, and I'm excited to see what you have to say. I think there's definitely a ton of potential here in what they can do. I think they can make some pretty groundbreaking changes to some champions. Maybe we'll see a Dracomorph treatment. Maybe we'll see a Mashal treatment to one of the champions. My final question for you guys is, if there was one champion who was going to get a Dracomorph or Mashal treatment, who would you want it to be? As always guys, if you like this content, don't forget to like this video, subscribe, turn on the notification bell so you're notified when my next video comes out, and I will see you all in the next upload.